But I think the dauntingness for me, at least, and I don't know if you guys feel the same, is more so because people want to put words in your mouth about your own experience, or they want to
Yeah,
be able to categorize that one person's lived experience with anxiety or depression is exactly the same. And then
yeah,
you're like, no, 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 wait, like, where did my experience with anxiety now get twisted into like somebody else's
exactly.
experience, and now nobody knows how to go back, or I'm not being authentic because that's not my lived experience.
Yeah, and I think what's also scary about it is, we're still trying to figure it out. Like we don't
Yeah.
even every day, is a different journey for us. So like some days we'll be feeling great and wanting to talk about it, and then other days we're not. And so it's really interesting because I think mental health has become something that, is more open, that more people are feeling like they can talk about. But with that also comes, doing interviews where someone will give us 30 seconds to talk about something like that. And we're like, oh, well, we're not entirely sure what to say here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just scary. And it's just also like realizing, it's scary enough, like putting it into lyrics, but then it's also more daunting being like, oh, saying this out loud, being like, oh, this is what I deal with every single day. This is what she deals with every single day.
Does depend on where you are and how you speak about it. And I think it's also about taking off the layer of knowing that it's an ever evolving experience. Like one day you're good, the next day you're not. One moment you're good, the next moment you're not. And that's okay. But
Mm-hmm.
when you are in the public eye and you are fearlessly speaking about it on an ongoing basis, it's like sort of like body acceptance, right? People want to fight against, if you're body positive, then you can't have a bad day. And I'm like, no, no, no. You can have good days, you can have bad days. You need to have those
Yeah.
bad days to get back to your good ones. And that's
Exactly.
okay. But when you guys are dealing with this and having to go on and speak about these things that are so personal, because the songs resonate so much with your personal stories, does you feel triggers arise? And if so, what do you do to sort of combat those or to walk alongside them?
Like with music that we put out or what?
No, I mean, like,
Sorry.
when you're speaking about, let's say you're speaking about Jackie
Oh,
Kennedy,
okay.
or you're
Yeah.
speaking about bipolar, and it's something in which um you are in a place where you're having your own flare up or having a challenging morning, and the press or people are asking of you to necessarily speak about it. Do you feel like sometimes that can bring up other emotions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone has low days and high days. And I think sometimes it's harder to talk about, but the more that I've been open about it and the more that I've talked about it and gotten a really, warm response because a lot of people can relate to it, it's made me way more comfortable and kind of more understanding of why I should talk about it and I should be open about it. Because if it helps me heal, hopefully it will help other people heal. And
Yeah.
especially after playing that song live, I think we both really learned
Yeah.
that like getting responses from people right after we would play the song was like such a cool experience and something that I would never want to like miss out on. But definitely some days it's harder than others, but
Yeah.
it's always worth
Definitely.
it.
And I think, for me, Natalia has definitely helped me a lot being more open about talking about mental health and just daily struggles like that, because I definitely did not do that for a very long time.
Yeah.
And, she would come to me and ask me, like, how are you? I'm like, I'm great. How are you? For like the longest time. And so I think just having each other is like so encouraging because, like, we'll do Zoom interviews or whatever. And if we're feeling anxious or nervous, like, you can't see, but we're like holding our hands like under the table and being like, it's okay, you got this. Like, you can get through it. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. So I think that's definitely the most helpful thing. At
Yeah.
least we're not doing it by ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things about you guys. Let's back it up a bit. Let's talk about your upbringings. I mean, Natalia, you grew up in Nashville, then transferred over to LA. Ruby, you grew up in Kenya, but then you moved to Los Angeles at 16. You guys found each other in a music studio, were able to kind of find that coping through creativity spoke to both of you guys in such an authentic way. But one of the coolest things that when I spoke last to Natalia, and I know a little bit about you guys' past, that I found out was, a lot of what you guys related on was the emotional journeys that you guys were currently on. And I think at that age, it's a really hard time for anybody to sort of have the vocabulary to be like, I have anxiety, I have depression, but you're feeling the feels and you're feeling them deep and you don't know where
Yeah.
to put them. Like,
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
I know that, that sort of encouraged you guys to write your first single, which was Wild Ones. But what back then made you feel like you both were experiencing a sense of anxiety or depression?
I think, at least for me, I didn't understand that at the time. I
Yeah.
do now looking back. I'm like, oh, that's what that was.
Hmm.
But definitely at the time, when growing up where I did, and maybe it's just within my family or my surroundings, like that's not something that's really spoken of. Like, oh, if you're dealing with something, I have an amazing mother who's always given me the best advice, and she's been so supportive of everything, and she would always like guide me through it, but it was never a conversation about mental health with anything. And so I think moving here and meeting Natalia and her being already at 16 and being so open about it, I was like, whoa, okay, maybe this is what's going on. And I definitely did not identify that until much later in life when I looked back and been like, oh, that's why I was feeling that way. And I think being alone, I moved to LA by myself at 16. And at that time, you think you're so mature and you think you have it all figured out. And I definitely did think that, which was not the case at all. So I just think meeting each other, and I was just out here by myself, and I was like, hey, I don't have any friends. Like, do you want to hang out with me? I don't know anyone here. Like, let's do this. And then we kind of just started writing this song, and we felt the same way about, like, she would come up with a line. I'd be like, that's exactly how I feel. How did you know that? And so I think that's just really what brought us together.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think at that age, for all of us, like even for myself, I look back and I had a ton of social anxiety, and I went back there and I was like, back then I thought I was cool. I just thought like, okay, I don't want to go to school. I want to paint. I want to do something creative rather than like having to deal with all of that. But I look back and I'm like, no, girl, you had a lot of social anxiety. Like that's what that was.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
if I could placate off of that, and when you have the right vocabulary, it's like a layer of the fear comes off. You go like, all right, I can sit in this pocket now because I know what's up. I know somebody else has survived this and I'm going to survive it too. And I think that's
Yeah.
exactly what you guys are consistently doing with everything you're approaching, is being able to allow other people to understand that it's okay to have vocabulary towards the feelings that you're feeling. And
Mhm.
sometimes that can actually guide you into a beautiful creative space.
I
I know.
also, yeah, I
Yeah, go
think like being able to define what you're feeling and using vocabulary about it kind of like gives you back your power over it, It kind of makes you realize, oh, that's, you can identify it. Be like, that's what's happening. It's
Yeah.
not just, it is who you are and it's a part of who you are, but it doesn't define you, And so being able to separate your anxiety from you as a person, I think has really helped me a lot.